I want to tell you something that took me a long time to say out loud. I was not well, and then I got better. And then my ex-husband spent 2 years trying to convince a family court judge that getting better was not something that actually happened. He had my psychiatric records from a hospitalization that occurred 8 years before the custody hearing. 8 years. I had been discharged, completed outpatient treatment, rebuilt my life, and been my daughter's primary caregiver for 6 years without a single incident, a single concern, a single flag from any teacher or doctor or school counselor who had ever come into contact with my children. None of that appeared in his filings. The hospitalization appeared in every single one. The waiting room at my therapist's office had a fish tank in the corner. I spent a lot of time looking at it during that period, not because I found it calming, because it was something to look at that was not the stack of legal documents in my bag, the ones where my worst year was being used as a character description. That fish tank got me through a lot of Tuesdays. The retention anchor is this. The same records he kept filing contained my discharge summary and my 6-month and 2-year follow-up assessments. All three documented a full recovery, stable functioning, and no ongoing clinical concerns. He had been submitting incomplete excerpts. The judge had only ever seen the admission notes. My name is Rachel. I have 2 daughters, Maya, who is 11, and Lily, who is 8. I was hospitalized for severe depression when Maya was 3 years old. It was the hardest year of my life, and also the year I finally got help, and I do not apologize for either of those things. My ex-husband, Daniel, had been present for all of it. He had held my hand in the intake room. He had attended couples counseling with me afterward. He had for several years appeared to understand what I had been through and what it had taken to come out the other side. When we separated, that understanding evaporated. What remained was a filing strategy. Daniel's attorney referenced my hospitalization in the first custody motion, the response to my first motion, the petition for modified custody, the objection to my proposed parenting plan, and the emergency motion he filed in October when Maya had a minor bike accident on my watch. 5 filings, 1 hospitalization, 8 years ago. My attorney was a woman named Claire, family law specialist, with the quiet fury of someone who has watched this particular playbook used too many times. Claire said, "He is counting on the word psychiatric to do the work for him. He is betting that the judge will see that word and stop reading." The midpoint arrived when Daniel filed a motion requesting a psychological evaluation of both parents, citing my history as the basis for concern. The motion was granted. I sat in an evaluator's office for 3 hours on a Thursday in February and answered questions about my childhood, my marriage, my treatment history, my parenting practices, and my current mental health. The room smelled of stale coffee and the particular dry warmth of an office that runs its heat too high. I answered everything. I had nothing to hide. The evaluator was a licensed psychologist appointed by the court. Her report took 4 weeks. I did not sleep well for any of those 4 weeks. The morning the report was due to be filed, I drove to my therapist's appointment and sat in the waiting room with the fish tank and tried to remember that I had done everything right, that I had been honest, that the record was the record. The report found no evidence of current psychological impairment. It noted my history, contextualized it accurately against the full clinical record, and concluded that I presented as a stable, engaged, and capable parent. It recommended primary physical custody remain with me with generous visitation for Daniel. Daniel's attorney filed an objection to the report's methodology within 48 hours. He objected to the methodology. Claire said, "He's out of moves. This is what it looks like when someone has been running a strategy and the strategy has just stopped working." The hearing was in April. The judge, a woman named the Honorable Patricia, had presided over family court for 14 years. Claire had appeared before her many times and described her as someone who reads the whole file. I did not know what that meant until the hearing began, and the judge spent the first 12 minutes of the session asking Daniel's attorney specific questions about the discharge documentation, the follow-up assessments, and the clinical notes from my 2-year review that had never been submitted by Daniel but had been included in the court-ordered evaluation bundle. She had read the whole file. She had read the parts Daniel had not wanted her to read. The judge awarded primary physical custody to me, with a standard visitation schedule for Daniel. She noted in her oral ruling that the court had been presented with selective documentation over a period of 2 years, and that a complete review of the clinical record showed a different and more accurate picture than the one repeatedly offered. She did not use the word deliberately. She used the word selective. In a courtroom, those 2 words are not as different as they might seem. I picked up Maya and Lily from school that afternoon. Lily showed me a drawing she had made of our cat. Maya told me about a fight with her best friend that had been resolved by lunchtime. I drove home the same way I always drive home and made dinner and helped with homework and put them to bed. The fish tank is still in the waiting room at my therapist's office. I noticed it last week and realized I had not thought about it in months. That is what recovery looks like from the inside. Not a dramatic moment, not a declaration. Just a Tuesday when you do not need the fish tank anymore. What do you do when the thing someone used against you is also the thing that made you who you are? I stopped trying to answer that question. The answer is in my daughter's faces every morning, and that is enough.